I understand this video is going to trigger a lot of people because from what I've seen, and I think it's already quite established in the anime and manga community, the big three are the big three and nothing is there to compete with them. They are cemented as the big three. For some reason, people love to defend the big three as the holy grail of anime and manga and claim that nothing else can truly ever surpass these three or be called the big three. Now, I kinda understand why people think this. Is because if something is called something, then you can't really get something else and call it the same thing. You get what I'm saying? But to the people who think the big three are the big three forever and nothing can ever change that and you can't replace it ever and call it something else, to those people, I say this: I don't care. While it's true that the big three are the big three, One Piece, Naruto, Bleach, they're always going to be the big three, but the big three of Seinen, on the other hand, that's a completely different story because now I've given it a different title and now we're talking about three completely different series. Look, I can just sit here for days, I can argue about which of these three or which of these six are the best, which is better in this and better in that, but instead of wasting my time on these TikTok addicts and Discord moderators, I wanted to sit down for a bit and just appreciate the brilliance of these three stories. And I think we should all sit down and just appreciate how incredible Berserk, Vagabond, and Vinland Saga truly are. What makes these three stand out from the others is the incredible depth and effort put into the characters by the authors and just the experiences and the way these characters are portrayed, the way they feel, and the way they're made. Just something about them makes them feel real, realistic, and in a way you can sort of relate to them. They experience challenges, failures, obstacles, and tragedy. And of course, there are many stories that do this with their main characters. There are many other protagonists that are relatable, that go through a lot of things, that are just such great characters, but there's something different about Berserk, Vagabond, and Vinland Saga. None of them really reach the extent of these three series in terms of character and story writing. Now, I want to clarify that having these three as the big three of seinen doesn't necessarily make them the three best seinen manga of all time, because obviously that's subjective, right? Though, to be honest, if someone did have these three as their top three, pretty sure nobody would argue, right? Like, let's be obvious. But let's be even more obvious, TikTok exists. Man, fuck that platform. It's less about which of these stories are the best. Well, it's more or less about the lessons in each story and how they're so similar in the way that the protagonists are presented and how the lessons are displayed in the protagonist. Can't forget the messages of the story and what it's really trying to teach you and how it expresses these lessons. It goes extremely meticulous and precise with the way things are done. There's many small things and small features with this story, with just the way the panels are drawn out and the emotions and the dialogue, the internal dialogue between the characters that makes these three so special. This is precisely why I scrapped the idea of calling this the Big Four and adding Kingdom to the mix, because Shin as a protagonist is nothing like Thorfinn, Musashi, and Guts. That's nothing to put against Shin because I still really love him as a character. It's just that the story of Kingdom is extremely different from these three that I'm talking about in this video. There's a reason I call them the big three of seinen. It's because if seinen was a certain genre, these three would fit that genre perfectly. These three are extremely similar in certain ways, very different in certain other ways, but the bottom line is that they share a lot of deep similarities between their three main protagonists, Guts, Musashi, and Thorfinn. And on that note, let's get into what really separates these three from each other. Guts, Musashi, and Thorfinn.
Can you shut the fuck up?
Guts is a character who's experienced possibly the darkest trauma you can ever experience as a child. We all know this man went through the craziest shit ever. He didn't experience the love of a mother after the age of 2 or 3, I think. He grew up in a mercenary band and learned how to wield a sword before he could even read. And he witnessed all the people he loved, every single one of his friends, die in front of him. And he witnessed his lover being raped by his best friend in front of him. He lost the things that he held dear to himself. Everything that he truly cared about was completely lost and would never truly be the way it once was. This drives him into insanity, into revenge, and into hatred. Hatred comes to us humans through an abundance of different situations. It could be through any kind of experience. We all experience hatred and we all express hatred to certain things. Some people express hatred on Twitter because of stupid things, and some people express hatred to certain other people for doing certain things. That's Guts in this situation. Through this experience of hatred and pursuing vengeance against the man he hated, Guts eventually learns this one thing. The hatred we hold from whatever it may be is merely a mask, like a covering for the sorrow we feel deep down because of what has happened in our lives. Anger is simply a cover-up. It's a way to escape the suffering and the sorrow. And once Guts learned this, he changed. He realized that this hatred that he had within him was just an excuse to suffer less. So instead of allowing what was inside of him to diverge his path and throw him off course, he threw his already broken self into the suffering, and through the immense cosmic number of barriers that Guts had to go through, the ridiculous number of adversities and struggles and failures that Guts had to go through, he still ends up pushing through in the suffering and coming out stronger than he once was, and achieving things he wouldn't have achieved if he had continued to hate Griffith and pursue that path. It's a story about understanding yourself. It's a story about pushing through the difficulties in your life, and many stories cover this, but the way Berserk does it is a much darker and traumatic way. It's not a very shonen way of never give up. It's a much darker, more realistic one with a lot of real events in the world, through a time period where many malevolent acts were committed, through a time period, or I guess through a setting where a lot of monsters and creepy ass things existed. Guts taught us to immerse ourselves in our own difficulties so that we could better ourselves and live freely, and we learned this through Guts' personal experiences. Though despite his incredible journey to peace, however, Guts still tends to become angry beyond belief in certain circumstances, which really does show us that whatever you do, there's still going to be anger within you. But that teaches us the importance of using the anger for the right reasons instead of using it to cover up the sorrow that we have within us. Guts is still learning this to this day, but he has come a long way from where he was. And through reading Berserk, we can come a long way from where we were, from chapter 1 to chapter 367 currently. Musashi is a character who set himself a lofty goal at first, and through this blind pursuit of this goal, he learned how pointless and how useless his actual drive for becoming invincible under the sun really was, and he truly realized the weakness in his own actions. Through battling the strongest swordsman in Japan, Musashi didn't just become a stronger swordsman in his pursuit to become invincible under the sun. What instead happened was he became stronger, more knowledgeable, and most importantly, a kinder person, especially towards the later half of the story. Instead of selfishly pursuing the goal that he set for himself, he instead sits down and helps others. And for an entire arc, he does something he is completely not obligated to do, but he chooses to do it anyway because he wants to learn the lessons that come with that type of struggle. He wants to learn to become stronger in a different way, and he wants to learn what it really means to be strong. By the time he became invincible, Musashi learned how meaningless and wasteful a goal like that really was, and he grasped that idea and that fact that was sitting there before him throughout his entire journey. There was really no such thing as invincible, and it was truly a word. Musashi had wasted 22 years of his life just to learn that one thing. But what does a man do when he does not achieve his goal? What does he do when things go wrong and things go completely off course, and when you change your mind, when you decide that this is not something you want to pursue with your life? What happens when this holistic pursuit is trumped and decades of effort go to quote-unquote waste, as Musashi depicts it? Those people, like Musashi, learn from their failures. Now, of course, we all know, learn from your failures and become stronger. But what's so brilliant about Vagabond is this. It shows that the 22 years were not in fact a waste for Musashi, because it is truly what allowed him to find the real answer. Because had he not ventured out to become the strongest, to become invincible, he may have never truly found out this answer at all. It all started with him being naive, and through pursuing a goal in the first place, through simply making a step, just by moving forward, Musashi learned the most important lesson of his life. This may happen to you as well. It teaches you to take a step when you don't want to take a step. In fact, the biggest misstep is not taking a step in the first place. Whatever goal you set for yourself, set the goal and pursue it holistically, and you will learn things that you didn't think you would learn on that journey, just as Musashi did. And as Musashi now remains, he's the strongest swordsman in Japan, but he still has so much to learn. He wishes to learn what he truly has left, and he wants to use what he has left to learn more and more. It's that pursuit of humility and learning that Musashi and Vagabond teach us through reading it. Thorfinn, unlike these other two protagonists, grew up in a peaceful and loving family, at least to a certain point, because we know what happens after a certain event. This leads to Thorfinn experiencing a traumatic event in front of him and swearing revenge upon the man who killed his father. He witnesses his father, his idol, the person he looked up to the most, being shot down by arrows, and despite his father's lesson to not pursue the sword and to have no enemies, Thorfinn does the exact opposite and takes revenge against the man who took his father. Throughout his journey to kill Askeladd, Thorfinn is constantly blinded by rage and revenge and doesn't have the ability to live on after he gets his vengeance, because the only thing he lives for at the time is getting vengeance on Askeladd. So if Askeladd were to die, Thorfinn would have nothing to do. And guess what happens? Askeladd dies. So because of this, Thorfinn experiences another paradigm shift and he's forced to do something about the man that killed his father being dead. He's forced to change his purpose in life because the man he was living to kill had now died, and so he had no purpose. And he now has to find this purpose of his through experiencing difficulty and becoming a slave and experiencing triumph, failures, one after another. Thorfinn finally understands his meaning and his purpose, and it's through this experience of finding meaning, purpose, and forgiveness that Thorfinn strongly begins to believe in his true dream and his true purpose in life, and that is to build the land of peace, Vinland. He sacrifices the weapon who takes the lives of others, both wielder and foe, to pursue peace, forgiveness, and prosperity in the land known as Vinland. He becomes a much stronger person by becoming more forgiving, more kind, and condemns meaninglessly throwing away your life in the name of becoming a true warrior and entering Valhalla and all that stuff. Thorfinn learns to give up the past and his shortcomings, and he learns to become a better person and forgive himself and his enemies who have truly done no wrong in certain situations. However, as we see many times, he still struggles with this. His hatred still takes over him, and a lot like Guts, we still have hatred within us. So does Thorfinn, and so he still struggles and is still learning how to control this hatred and use it properly. All three of these masterful tales are not just tales. They are truly journeys, and journeys that are unrivaled by any other. Through each character, we can learn many crucial lessons and become better people ourselves through these role models. Despite the fact that they are fictional characters, they still provide us with so many important lessons. Guts taught us to struggle through suffering, Musashi taught us to better ourselves from within, and Thorfinn taught us to forgive, love, and be kind. And I hope by now I've taught you to subscribe to my channel and like this video. Well, that's it. Peace.